Annalisa, thank you so much again for being here today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
All right, so I know that a new law passed in California called SB 1383, and I know that's just for California, but could you just give us a quick 60-second rundown of what that bill entails?
Absolutely. So SB 1383 or State Bill 1383 is a greenhouse gas reduction law in California that requires many food generating businesses and institutions in the state, including schools, to donate their surplus food. This means that schools will be required to donate their surplus food starting on January 1st, 2024. But this means that our schools only have about 20 months to figure out how to comply, because we're about to start the next school year this fall. So you'll have one whole school year until next fall. And then in the middle of the next following school year is when this regulation will take place. So for California schools, they will also need to have a contract or written agreement with a food recovery organization or other nonprofit that they choose to partner with to receive their donated food. And I will also mention that the state of Washington passed a similar law last month, so it's possible that other states might follow.
Oh, that's good to know, right? Could be coming to a state near you. Look out. All right, so now even if this isn't a law in their state, I'm sure that there's plenty of folks on this call that want to reduce, their food waste. And it's my understanding that one of the ways they can do that is with food sharing tables. And I mean, I'm sure it's a common question for a lot of people, that is it true that items that are taken in the line first can actually be reserved?
Right, yeah, so absolutely. Food share tables and other practices for collecting items that were served but not opened are allowed by the USDA, and that can be done with food share tables, or I'll give an example in a second. But specifically, certain items like whole fruit, packaged vegetables, like think carrot packets, and shelf-stable items can be reserved as part of a reimbursable meal. So for example, if you participate in breakfast after the bell, you might consider collecting the surplus whole apples that were not eaten and double check to make sure they're not bitten into or have bruises or other situations that would make them not eligible for reserving. And then you might consider providing those same apples as a fruit choice for the same day's lunch service. Another example that includes food share tables might be collecting the unopened applesauce cups that are placed on a food share station to be served the next day, since those are shelf-stable items. And just a note to mention that there are requirements for washing items and making sure they're clean and sanitized before reserving. So you'll want to double check with your local health department on those.
Okay. All right. Kind of speaking on that, I know everyone is very ready to have COVID in their rearview mirror, but I feel like this is still a relevant question. Is food sharing, still allowed while things are still a little bit wonky with COVID?
Yeah, and we've been getting this question often ever since schools reopened, but the CDC has confirmed that there's little evidence that shows that COVID-19 spreads through contact with surfaces. And we have also communicated with our state agency, CDE, as well as our local environmental health department to confirm that food share can operate as normal as in California as before the pandemic. But for those outside of California, I do recommend that you seek guidance from your local health department, as they have the authority to advise on this and provide you with guidance regarding the risk levels for community spread.
Okay, right. It's always good to double check. Okay, so I know you gave a few examples already, but could you just throw out a couple more examples of specific items that could be used for this?
Yeah, so basically any unopened, unbitten items from school meal programs can be donated, including whole fruit with edible peels. So thinking apples, pears, and also temperature controlled items like milk, and even hot entrees, as long as they've been maintained in their respective safe temperature zones. So for example, a milk, you'd want to make sure that the milk hasn't been outside of the zone for over 2 hours, that if it was put on a food share table, that it was sat down on an ice pack to keep it cool for the amount of time that it's out of the refrigerator, and that hot meal items have been cooled to the proper temperatures before being donated. Again, this is where the local health department can come in very handy, being able to help guide you on safe food handling and donation procedures. I also
Okay.
wanted to mention, sorry, just that the
Yeah.
CDE does require that in California that school food donations go to a 501c3 nonprofit entity. And if you're outside of California, you'll want to check with your Department of Ed on that as well.
Okay, so the donation rules, could most likely vary by state, but there's definitely a way to do it. So that's fantastic. Okay, so with all that said, if sustainability is something that a district would like to start implementing but hasn't yet, probably doesn't know where to start, what would you say is a good place for them to start?
Yeah, so great place to start, even if you are kind of worried about thinking about donation, is to really look at your food share station. So thank you for pulling up these slides just to kind of illustrate that. So just really wanted to highlight that investing in your food share station is going to provide you with so many benefits to think about food waste prevention and also work on reducing the surplus that you have so that you don't have to think about donating what's left over at the end. So a couple ways you might consider doing that are really looking at your signage. So does your food share station have clear signage with photos of the items that are allowed to be shared and in what bins? We recommend having separate bins for cold items and hot items because, if you put a hot entree down right next to a cold milk, that cold milk is very quickly going to get warm, and who wants to drink lukewarm milk? It's also helpful to separate all the fruits together so that it just really looks like an extension of the food service line. So in a lot of our districts, we've helped set them up with these really pretty green carts that help make everything nice. And the last thing I mentioned before, but we also recommend having an ice pack in the food share station for the cold items to keep them temperature safe.
Yes. All right. Absolutely. Somebody's already asking, where can I find a cart like this? I like it.
Yeah, I'll chat. I'll respond in the chat box.
Oh, that'd be wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, this makes complete sense because it keeps everything safe, and then when it keeps it tidy as well, it just sort of makes it, more appealing to come and grab something. That's great. So I know that there's obviously very many environmental benefits to preventing food waste, but what are some other surprising benefits and statistics of these sustainability efforts, like food sharing, that you think our listeners would be interested in today?
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple, and one that I actually forgot to mention on the last slide. There was a little statistic on the corner that said in a single week in one of our schools that was actually trying to track these efforts, they recorded that in a single week, there were 226 items, hot entree items, that students took from the serving line. They didn't eat for whatever reason, but put them on the food share table. And then 226 times another student took a hot entree to actually consume. So that's just to give you an idea of how much a food share table really can facilitate the food sharing and, allowing students to, maybe take a second entree if they're hungry enough, or maybe there is a student who didn't bring their lunch or wanted to have a second helping. So that's one way that a food share station can really help. You might not actually see it happening during the lunch period because things are happening really fast and you're trying to get the food out there, but they really do help students to eat more food. And then I also wanted to point out on this slide, you can see on the left that there is a food share cart in one of our schools in Alameda County that was overflowing with tons of the entree that were being served. So in the middle bin, at the top shelf, and on the bottom shelf, they're just overflowing with whatever this entree is. And I can tell you from looking at the picture, I'm pretty confident that it was the chili. And the reason why potentially that it was being put on the food share table is that it doesn't look very appetizing. So the way it's been served is in a little boat tray, and then it's wrapped in a plastic wrap, not the cling top where you open the top, but it's a whole wrapper. And so the chili can kind of get like all over the place and it just doesn't look good. So this food share table was a really great visual cue for the food service staff to see, oh my gosh, this packaging is not working for our food service for this item. So why don't we look at other ways that we can package this item so that it looks more appetizing and students will want to eat it. And then on the right side, you could see that once that day's leftover on the food share table was combined with surplus from the back of the kitchen that maybe this was a Friday and it wasn't going to last until the next week. And so they had to donate whatever was left. When we weighed it all, it was 200 pounds of food. So you might think, in a single day service, oh, how much food do we really have? We're really trying to do a good job, but it really does add up. And you might have those days that just, for whatever reason, just have a lot of surplus. And this is part of why that California state law is taking part. But if we can really try to look at our food share tables to really try to reduce our food waste from the beginning, hopefully we won't have all this surplus to donate at the end.
Yeah, wow. I'd say those are some very convincing statistics. I mean, 226 is like 900 a month, so that's a lot. And then, add the surplus into there. So that definitely makes a big difference. And you can see, again, outside of just the environmental, impact, you're getting that visual, that feedback, what dishes, are appetizing to the kids. And then the ones that are hungry and growing and running around and stuff, they get all that extra food, all those extra snacks. So everybody wins, everybody's happy. I love it. And thanks so much for sharing these tips. The chat box is a buzz. I think everyone loves it. And I think this is a really fantastic place for everyone to start. So thanks so much for joining us today, Annalisa. We really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me.